Thank you very much, comrades and friends. This isn't on, is it? Oh, is it? Okay, lovely. Nothing at all prepares you. No reading of a book, no brilliant meeting, no movie prepares you for the real experience of witnessing a revolution in the flesh and blood. There is simply nothing like it. And sometimes in Tahrir Square, I felt just overwhelmed by the experience of what was going on. It's something that if you could bottle it, you know, and in a sense, that's what's happening. It's being sent around. It's something absolutely incredible. And the idea of what we were watching, what I was witnessing, was ordinary people taking control of their own lives. That's simply what it is, isn't it? And the ordinary people are the people who are most often told, you need people to represent you. You need people who are better educated, more articulate. The people that are most disparaged, the people that are most looked down on, trivialised, patronised. Particularly in the Arab world, this idea that they need a strong leader. You know, that they need dictators. That's what this region needs. These are the very people that have shown what a mighty force they are. And you better believe it, there's lots of aging dictators trembling in their palaces because they recognise that as well. And that is something that the Egyptian people have done. Been inspired by Tunisia, and Tunisia was mentioned a lot to me, the idea that we're following them. But of course the difference with Egypt is, it is the power in that region. As somebody said, I think it was in the FT, Egypt matters. Because the sheer scale of the country, for one, its strategic importance to the West and to imperialism, about 80 million people in a country where 40% of the population live on $2 a day, where a country where 50% of the population is under 20, who have endured, some for all of their lives, 30 years of a dictatorship, of torture, of repression, of corruption. Really, in a way, it was a revolution waiting to happen, wasn't it? But it was also a revolution that many people thought would never happen. Certainly Mubarak didn't think it was ever going to happen. But many of the people in the street, they've surprised themselves, even, that it's happening. And when you see what we saw in Jason's film, and when we hear from Wasim what people have endured on several occasions, where really what is a counter-revolution was trying to smash them, endured bullets, tear gas. I mean, the tear gas made in the USA, some people said, to add insult to injury, some of it was actually cast its sell-by date. It had on it, they showed me canisters, you know, should have been used by 2003. You know, they make tear gases, well, they don't even use stuff that's up to date. But that sense of what people have endured, and these people are not soldiers, they are not police officers, they are ordinary people, they are you and me who withstood this. And I think that when you see what they put up with, and, you know, people say about violence, don't they? When we as socialists talk about violence, we talk about the violence in revolutions comes when the ruling class and the old regime don't want to give up their privileges. And this is what's happening, isn't it? Because, as Wasim said, when the police went, it became a safe city. One guy said to me in one of the local committees with their white sashes, you know, keeping secure, he said, we don't need the police to make order, we make our own order. And the place has never been safer. But I think what is interesting, and you know, we often, and it's been referred to, and Mohammed said about Tunisia, a revolution isn't a one-day event. You can think it's a heroic battle on the barricades that wins or loses. And I think some of our younger comrades feel like that as well. Like, what's happening? He's still there, isn't it? Actually, it's a process. Think of the Russian Revolution, February to October, and they'd also had 1905. This is a sense at which it's like a roller coaster. Now we can follow it minute by minute on Al Jazeera live, but actually it is a process, and we've already seen a roller coaster of things happening, even just in the space of just over 2 weeks. It's absolutely phenomenal. But what is happening in the last 24 hours is really exciting as well, isn't it? The intensifying of the revolution. Workers taking action. And one socialist explained to me, he said, look, Judith, businesses and factories have been shut down by their bosses for the most of this revolution so far. It's not like people have an option to strike. You know, they couldn't actually go to work most of the time. Actually, some of the normality returning is actually opening up some of the sense of workers can now collectively say, well, actually, we're a bit inspired by this. We're going to ask for economic demands about our pay and our jobs and our conditions and kick some some of our bosses out that we don't like because they're corrupt. But also some of them then, political demands, supporting Tahrir Square, supporting the revolution. Postal workers were due to march into Tahrir Square together as a group. Concrete workers, cement workers went in as a group yesterday. These are small things, but the beginning of how the revolution could develop in a different way. Sit-ins and all. These are things which we can see how the thing can change. And I think that when you look at, there was a disgusting front page of The Independent the other day, which had a picture of Tahrir Square, you know, when it was full up, with hundreds of thousands of people, and a picture that really only had maybe 1,000 people on it. And of course they were saying, oh, is it all over? I don't know if people saw it. I thought it was just so little understanding of what was going on, when actually only the day before yesterday, it was the biggest day that they'd ever seen in Tahrir Square. So the idea that we should write it off, we have to understand what's going on. And, you know, when Mubarak made his speech that night to say, I'm going to stand down in September, you know, and all the rest of it, I stood in a street with the local security committee. The car doors were open, they turned the radio up loud, the street went silent, the little cafes further down, silent, the TVs rolling. And everybody listened to it. They didn't say anything during the speech, just listened. Now, I don't speak Arabic. I was waiting for somebody to translate, and he kept saying to me, I'll tell you at the end, tell you at the end. And then I was thinking, what is he saying? He couldn't be resigning, we'd all be cheering. But at the end of it, it was just rage. Utter rage that he thinks that we're going to put up with him until September. You know, no way. And so one of the slogans that people had on their placards, and I don't know if it's in one of Jess's pictures, was, understand, you idiot. Because there's no way were people going to be bought off by this. Another slogan said, you can't fool the children of the revolution. What was so astounding through it all, and really Mohammed described it once at a meeting a couple of weeks ago, that first revolution seems a long time ago now, when he said the fear changed sides. People had been fearing the state, but the fear changed sides. And that's what you saw on the streets of Cairo. People were not afraid anymore. People wandering up and down the streets, holding up their own placards saying, go, go. That was the real slogan from everybody. Just bits of cardboard. And people got to remember, in the square, it's not like Trafalgar Square. Not only is it a zillion times bigger, but there isn't campaign placards. There isn't placards like we have of different groups and things. They're homemade. Everything, you know, is rigged up in a way of the spontaneity of it coming through. And I think that loss of fear, the idea of fighting for freedom, and the idea of the difference, the speed of change. We might be impatient for Mubarak to go, for there to be Soviets, but actually the speed of change is phenomenal. One socialist sat in a street cafe drinking tea and saying, you know, only a few days ago I was in Alexandria organising some socialist meetings with some younger comrades, and I was being followed by, you know, the secret police, who questioned the cafe owner about who was I didn't come from Alexandria, what was I doing here? He said, no, I was sitting in an open-air cafe talking to a revolutionary from London, in the open, talking about changing society, talking about whether we should take the TV station or the presidential palace, and walking by, people shouting about Mubarak and exchanging how evil he is and what a murderer. He said, I feel like I'm living in a different country. Couldn't quite even take it in himself. And that sense of liberation, that sense of that process of struggle, even now, people have changed, and I think, as you say, people have changed forever, whatever happens. And walking through, you get the welcome to Egypt as you walk through the crowd, but you also get welcome to the Egyptian revolution. People shaking your hand. They want you to feel welcome, they want you to be part of it, and they want you to tell people what is going on. And I think that when you think of what they've done in that city centre, I mean, think of the size. We think London's big. Cairo was 20 million people. It's a powerhouse of a city, and the city centre has been taken over by ordinary people. And I think that when the march happened on Tuesday, when it was estimated between 4 and 8 million people marched in Egypt, it was 8 million, that's 10% of the population took to the streets that day. It was phenomenal. At one point, it looked like, as the crowd moved down one of the boulevards into the square, and it had to shuffle along, you know, because it was so full, it almost looked like they were on wheels. It was so dense and solid, all moving together as one collective mass. You really got a sense of how individuals together are greater than the sum of their parts. That absolutely immense. It was absolutely phenomenal. And the scenes of Muslims and Christians praying. Constantly I kept hearing the word, this is unprecedented. Everything was unprecedented, the favourite word. But to me, sometimes some of the most moving parts of what I witnessed was the sort of small acts of resistance. Was being in the square at 6 in the morning as the sun came up, watching people wake up, sleepy children getting up as if they're in their bedroom, but they're in a muddy tent in the middle of a roundabout with thousands of other people. And people would come in and put out clean water and cut off water bottles. Somebody would come with a little cart and give out bowls of couscous. Somebody else would be boiling, lots of the little camps, boiling tea and passing them round and asking, would you like some? Do you want to come and join us? People reading the newspapers in circles and huddles discussing what is going on. I think sometimes these smaller acts were even just the fact of them being there was resistance. And they didn't want to go away. They didn't want to go home and come back again. They wanted to stay. They wanted to show that they were not going to be held back. And another slogan, they know the stakes, was stay or die. And that's what people felt. And all around, and I so agree with what's saying, this whole idea of the potential for humanity to be something different. It is just, we always say, don't we, as socialists, that actually the potential for us, if we get away from that crushing, horrible capitalism that forces you to compete and dog eat dog and everything else, what can blossom from humans was in that square. The generosity of spirit, the solidarity, the humour, lots of humour, respectful of difference. The whole idea of the creativity of the banners and the whole sense of people taking over for themselves. And even the barricades. They did security, but sometimes it was police pods, that cops normally stand in, put over on one side. In one street, Jess and I saw a barricade made of pot plants. Obviously they didn't expect a complete riot to go through it, but just that sense of marking out our streets. And we often chanted, don't we, our streets. Well, these were their streets. And so you had the security, you had women being part of the team searching people just to secure the area, directing the traffic, sweeping the road. Even though tens of thousands of people are sleeping there, it's spotlessly clean. And the whole sense of everybody passing around food, the medical attention that people got, even when the pharmacies were running out, doctors slept on one side of the square so they could get help. You'll see the picture in Social Worker of the medical instruments trying to be, in flames or trying to disinfect them, and tremendous what people were doing. And all the time, what do we get in the news? Not about the tremendous achievement of the people. Islamism. We're going to get an Islamic government. Oh my goodness. Cameron does it about here, Islamophobia, but they're doing it about there. And I think it's the idea that if we had, if they have an election, they might elect a government that we don't like. Well, they shouldn't have democracy. Do Muslims not deserve democracy? Should they not be allowed to have an election for whatever they want? No. What the sort of freedom and democracy the US and the West like is that at the end of a gun, isn't it? When they say they're going to Afghanistan to bring democracy, or when they say they're going to go to Iraq to bring democracy. But we know it's the American paid-for guns that are facing the people fighting for democracy in this time, aren't they? Paid for by the Americans. Those jets that flew low and frightened the wits out of us, back and forwards, we thought it might be an indication of a coup, paid for by American money. And I think this whole idea that the Americans can bring liberation and democracy to these countries, but they can't do it for themselves, is such a lie. Because the women's liberation, we're going to bring it to Afghanistan. I don't think so. But hey, they're doing it at Tahrir Square. I thought that was wonderful what you said. But women are at the centre of this. Whether it's on the TV, seeing them helping pass rocks to the front, but chanting, organising, absolutely part of it. Whether it's in the organisation, I think it's just fantastic. And the idea that we have to patronise Muslim women to say that they need us to liberate them is a nonsense. Women in the full niqab, women in the hijab, and women with neither were absolutely part of this. Point. There is still the danger of counter-revolution. This is a process. They still want to hang on to power. But I think when we look at how this has changed millions already, it's changed millions around the world. It's a beacon, isn't it, for people to feel that there could be a different sort of society. For me, it completely renewed my belief that the possibility of having a socialist society, that we can change the world. But I think we have to say that when we look at what can happen, in Jason's film, the one guy said to camera, he said, we want to change the history of Egypt. Well, if they win, they won't just change the history of Egypt. They won't even just change the history of the Arab world in the region. They will change the history of the world. And I think we have to look at what's going on there, offer our solidarity, say they are our sisters and our brothers, fighting for a better world, and therefore we want to give them every solidarity we can, but also fight maybe and to get rid of our own government, which I think could deserve a little bit of